Welcome to the AI Corner. I'm your host, Mike Bailey, here to spotlight the people shaping New Zealand's AI future. In today's episode, we're speaking with Heath Waugh. Heath is founder of Matter Studio, New Zealand's first AI-powered product photography studio. Heath blends 2 decades of traditional commerce photography with cutting-edge generative technology to completely rethink how brands create visual content. Welcome to the pod, Heath.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks for having me on.
Happy to be here with you as well. Before we talk about Matter Studio, tell us about your journey into the world of AI.
So, like you mentioned, my background's in commercial photography. I left the advertising world about 20 years ago and went out on my own as a producer, and then moved into starting a photography studio, which we started about 15 years ago, the same team that I still work with now. So we've shot commercially for a lot of kind of big New Zealand brands for a long time. In that time, I guess, accumulated a lot of hours on the tools, a lot of kind of studio craft, which put us in pretty good stead for utilizing AI in the way that we have. You know, when we started kind of delving into things, we saw an opportunity to really make something different in terms of a kind of hybrid workflow where we combined what we've been doing for a long time with emerging tech. And that was the idea behind Matter.
Awesome. And I'm sure there's a lot of people out there thinking, what is the AI kind of photography? There's a bit of a battle perhaps, but so what does AI generative photography really mean? Like, how would you explain Matter in one sentence to someone who has no idea as to what the topic is all about?
Elevator pitch. I guess we take real world product and we shoot it in the studio, and then we composite that into AI generated backgrounds. And we do that to kind of take away the hassle of shooting that product on location and kind of limit some of the variables that come with shooting on location and the time and costs and effort that goes with that. Because most people who have shot product on location are pretty familiar with how painful it can be. And we've got a lot of experience doing that ourselves. Particularly, we decided early on to really focus on furniture because we saw that was a real pain point that could be solved. Because if you've ever been involved with a furniture shoot, it's a battle. Getting the product to location, moving the homeowner's stuff out of location, all of the costs that come with that, finding the right location. And then it's a slow moving beast once you're actually shooting. You know, you're waiting for the right light. You know, you might only get 2 to 3 shots a day, whereas when all of those elements are kind of controllable within the studio, you can get through a lot more without a lot of the hassle and effort and cost.
Are you seeing particular industries more receptive to AI photography than others?
I mean, furniture and homewares, furniture and home furnishings, definitely. I think we were aware that they were already quite progressive in terms of emerging tech. There was already kind of 3D renders and AR and VR and other kind of technology being involved or incorporated into their imagery. So we knew that AI was probably not too much of a push for them, as well as the fact that it solved a lot of problems. And we were right about that. You know, they have been by far and away probably the most responsive industry. So yeah, and on top of that, it's the home furnishings. For example, we kind of put 200 plus kitchen handles in situ in 215 or so kitchens, which just in real life is impossible. You know, there is absolutely no way that you could shoot your full range in 215 different scenarios. You'd never find the homes, or you'd never be able to build the room sets. The cost would just be too prohibitive and the time involved. So we're finding a lot of kind of clients in that zone that have enough SKUs that they typically only focus on maybe the top 10% of their range, showing them in situ, and then just have kind of supporting studio imagery for the rest. In doing it this way, they can show their whole range in situ. So it's a big development for them.
It's a massive cost saving for so many businesses to be able to shoot their products in environments where perhaps they weren't able to access in the past. And even for New Zealand brands, I'm sure they're now able to exhibit their products in almost overseas looking markets by virtue of what you can do with Gen AI.
That's it. I mean, it's great for exporters because you can match the style of imagery to the location that you're exporting to. But also, you know, there was an example we had where there's a flooring brand that were kind of struggling to get into the homes that they wanted to be in, because they weren't at the top end of that market, although their product was quite premium. But architects and so forth and designers were choosing the other product. So they weren't getting the right kind of imagery, the right homes to support the quality of their product. And in that kind of case, you can showcase it in anything that you want, really, in the top end homes from around the world. So there's opportunities like that for brands are pretty hard to pass up.
Absolutely. And also from a marketing perspective, well, this is all about marketing at the end of the day, but you can shoot, you can edit, you can produce a test case of an image and then test what that looks like in the market. What's the reaction to that? And pretty quickly optimize and iterate. Whereas previously you would have had to have gone and waited for the full results and booked a full shoot, get the models and all that kind of stuff. That speed to kind of have more shots on goal is super invaluable for brands.
Absolutely. And I guess we're starting to see that in a lot of markets now, particularly fashion. I'm starting to see it more and more. So people are starting to test their images with the market, sometimes before the product's even produced, just to see how people are going to respond to that particular thing. And then if that's great, if the response is great, then they can move into production. They've already tested the market and they're already aware that it's going to be a good seller. Developments like that, again, are pretty amazing for brands.
Yeah, that feedback loop gets accelerated pretty quick. Do you find that when you're shooting humans versus product, there's probably a lot of considerations there, right? Does that come into the way you offer your services?
In terms of generating humans into AI images?
So yeah, it could be generating humans into AI images.
Initially, and part of wanting to work in the furniture space, in the product space, was based on, there was no grey area really for me there. I think AI generated humans early on, I wasn't completely comfortable with. But also, I don't think the technology was really at the point that you could do it convincingly either. As time's gone on, I've become more comfortable with it because I think times are changing. And from what we're seeing out in the world, people are less, maybe, they don't have the ick that I thought they would initially about AI-generated humans, and times are changing. So as time's gone on and the technology's advanced to the point where we can make really believable, really kind of emotive lifestyle imagery featuring people, I've moved with that as well. So started to embrace that.
Fascinating. And I suppose you're a photography purist from way back. What sort of resistance have you been met with in the market from others who perhaps haven't moved with the times, so to speak?
Yeah, I don't begrudge anyone their position. There is a lot of resistance from the creative community. I think anyone who's traditionally trained in a creative medium is going to want to kind of gatekeep that, especially if they make their living off it, And I've been involved in photography for 20 years. I could be one of those people, but I guess, I'm more pragmatic than that. I know that times are changing. I know this, as soon as I started digging into this, I knew that it was kind of paradigm shifting, that it could totally kind of reinvent the way that we do things. But again, I don't begrudge anyone who wants to do anything traditionally. And I understand why people are upset. There's a couple of areas to that. But, creatives in particular feel funny about potentially the hard-earned yards they've learned with the camera or something being replaced. So it's understandable. I'm just more curious about what the future might hold, I guess, than resistant.
Yeah, I think there's an element of, working to be optimistic about it, but totally respect that people have spent years refining the craft.
Sure.
It can be a real, it can be a hit, right? If that's where you've developed your skill.
Yeah.
All of a sudden.
And I think almost all technological advances lead to a bit of a renaissance for the traditional method. So I think if people are determined to sticking to their path, with the traditional tools, I think they'll be fine. And as long as you're bringing something exceptional to the table, there'll still be work. I think if you're sitting in the middle territory, where maybe you're not bringing too much to the table, I think that work will start to disappear as things get automated. But yeah, the other area, I guess, is where we are, and that's the kind of hybrid workflow of combining the past and the present. And I think there's more and more and more of that starting to kind of appear around me, really kind of good senior photographers from around the world. I'm starting to see them pop up on LinkedIn going, look at what I just did, And these are people with kind of 30-year careers in the game. So some people are open to change and some aren't. It's just the way it is.
As you say, everyone has their aha moment at some point with these tools, and some decide to get on board, some don't, or some are taking a bit longer than others. I almost think about AI created products, services, whatever you want to call them, it's the equivalent of something that's produced from either by a machine or a robot in a factory, or the human handcrafted
Sure.
boutique niche output. And I would imagine that there are different audiences that are more receptive to either of those options, right? And I'm sure it's the same with AI generated photography.
Absolutely. I could name a bunch of fashion brands or furniture brands who would never look at AI at all because they value too much the craft of their imagery. And that's fine too, but there's a bum for every seat, and different brands want different things. So, we tend to work with people who are kind of larger and have a lot of SKUs and a lot of volume. And because of that, they have problems with keeping up with their imagery or keeping up with the volume of shooting on location. And this is a big problem solver for them. So,
Excellent. Would you be up for walking us through your kind of creative process? I'm sure everyone would be really intrigued as to how that works without giving away
yeah,
IP.
yeah, no worries. So, I mean, the studio, when we started the studio, the aim was to shoot everything, essentially. I was kind of aware that as technology advanced, maybe the automation was going to move beyond that, and that the way that we were working traditionally might become redundant at some stage. And that is happening. But as that started to happen, we've kind of rolled with it, I guess, rather than just only looking at photography only. So we do have other ways of working without as much photography, but I'll talk about the photography. So typically we will get a brief from a brand about the type of location that they want to showcase their product in. We'll generate imagery prior to the shoot, share that with the client. They'll kind of drill down into what they like. I'll generate a similar product into the scene. It's not an exact product because AI doesn't really work like that. Otherwise, we wouldn't have the work that we do. But the client will kind of have to use their imagination a little bit to envisage their product in that scene. Once that's approved, we'll then shoot in studio. The shoot's almost a little bit of a formality because the images are approved prior to the shoot. We will then shoot that product in a cohesive way with the background. And we also have the similar product in that image to use as a lighting guide, perspective guide. Once that's shot, we'll composite the two and we'll move into retouching. And the next thing is the client will see the finished image. So sometimes the clients aren't even on the shoots these days because, everything's approved prior to the shoot.
So where does the time get spent as part of that process nowadays? Is it in the editing, or is the editing?
It's in the front end. It's really kind of different. Although there's pre-production in most shoots, most of the action happens on the day. And then there's retouching involved. Everything is so front loaded with the way that we work. All the concepting, all of the kind of artworking's done up front. So that's really different. And the shoot becomes a real formality. And then there's a lot more retouching because you're working in a composite way. But then again, there's often quite a lot of retouching in just traditional photography as well. So definitely at the front end, that's how it's different.
If you're willing to share, it sounds as though you're very successful in what you're doing and hitting the brief most times. Have you had any failures where it hasn't gone to plan because of the technology and the limitations you bump up against?
I mean, I don't think there are a lot of limitations. We're still in a really kind of exploratory stage. We're still figuring the stuff out, But I think with time, there's not much that you can't achieve right now. I think with photography, we've had kind of 70 years of flash learning what camera bodies go with what lenses, with what, with what lighting, with what programs to get from A to B. With AI, we've had all of that in 2 years. Equivalent amount of tools just kind of dumped on us, and we're still trying to figure out what goes with what. But with the right amount of time and effort, I think most solutions can be found. So there's not many issues or limitations, I think, at the moment. It just takes a lot of time on the tools to figure those things out.
I suppose speaking of tools, is it as simple as you've got all the mid-journey models or Stable Diffusion as your tool? Like, is there anything special outside of the tools that most people have heard of when it comes to Gen AI and photography?
Not really. I mean, most people will dip their toes in with Midjourney. That's where most people will start. Midjourney has become an incredibly complex tool. I think the issue with a lot of people is that they never really get past the surface level of using these tools. But with the right amount of kind of dedication and time on the tools, you can achieve anything, really. But most people will try some basic prompts. And I often talk to creative directors or design directors who just go, tried it, but it's shit. My images are coming out terrible. I don't know why. And it's because they never really get past that entry level stage and they get frustrated and they go, doing it traditionally is better or easier, but really it just, I mean, you wouldn't pick up a camera and immediately have great results. You need to build your skills, and it takes a bit of time. I mean, I work on these tools 8 to 10 hours a day and have done for 3 years now. You need that to really figure these things out. And then once you start stringing together multiple platforms, I think that's where the kind of real secret sauce is not just sticking to one thing, knowing what platforms do what well, which you only figure out by using them, and then how to combine those into a workflow that solves a problem.
And I believe that's where the human in the loop concept is so important for judgment and knowing how to stitch together these tools. And
that's it.
That becomes even more important, especially, pointing in the direction of trust. There's a lot of deep fake talk around at the moment, and has been around for years when it comes to content online. And I would imagine there's probably some people quite skeptical, trust in photos perhaps eroding in some areas. I don't know if that comes up as part of, the discussions you have.
No, I mean, we're in a pretty clear-cut area there, and that's why I mean, product photography is our background as well. It's what we've been doing for a long time, but it's people are more RFA with generated stuff around product because we've seen 3D renders in advertising for a long time, and it's the same. I guess AI is a little bit of a boogeyman. People are a little bit funny about things. They're a bit threatened by the fact that it might take away jobs, or they might disagree with the way the models were trained in the first place. It's happening a lot in the creative community. So people they've got more of an issue with AI than maybe rendering or other kind of technology. But I think things change over time. And yeah,
public perceptions would change. And just going back to your point around, you're seeing a lot of bigger business adoption of AI photography. My instinctive thought would have been you've got bigger businesses with as you say, the need to scale their photography efforts and creative outputs. But then you've also got smaller business who perhaps previously didn't have the budget for high quality photography. Gen AI has opened up a floodgate for them where they can access really good output and creative. Is that a market that you see a lot of opportunity in, or is it more the upper end of town?
I mean, we're in the upper end of town, but I think there are tools there for the people in the smaller businesses. There's automated tools. And so I think the opportunities are there for small sellers, small e-com brands to kind of create imagery that they could have never dreamed of making before. And they can do it themselves. They don't need to seek out people like us to put it together. There's plenty of tools these days that can kind of put a product into a scenario in a more basic kind of way than we work. A lot of our work comes down to lighting and techniques that we've learned in the studio over the years. Whereas a situation like that, you'd typically be taking an e-commerce style product photo and generating a background around it. So it's less about lighting and craft and more about just cut and paste essentially. But it's still a cool opportunity for people to make stuff that they couldn't have previously.
Yeah, the creative paradigm has shifted. And thinking about projects and the scale and cost that can be achieved, like without giving away too much about the numbers, like what is the magnitude of savings that brands and businesses can expect from doing a full photo shoot compared to what it previously might have cost?
I mean, it's hard to quantify because shoots can vary in cost so dramatically depending on location costs and the photographer you're using and talent and all sorts of things. So a shoot could cost you $3,000 or it could cost you $30,000 for the day. But the savings are really considerable. It depends on what's being put into what scene and the time that's involved in retouching. But I'd say typically at least you'd be seeing a kind of 30% reduction on costs, plus the opportunity to showcase your product in any environment. You're not kind of geographically restricted, and there's volume as well. There's the potential to get through a lot more in a shorter time. So yeah, it's pretty across the board. It's a pretty big shift.
That's awesome to hear. And I suppose, you're from New Zealand, you work with New Zealand companies. Do you work with a lot of overseas brands? Like, is there a heavier demand overseas? I mean, bigger markets, but do you chase those overseas markets as well?
So yeah, since we started working with existing imagery, and in the early days, we had to have the product in studio to shoot the product. But since times have changed and we've become able to work with existing images and also train LoRa's. I don't know if you know about LoRa's, but that's a low rank adaptation where you train the model on the product. So we'll give it a lot of imagery so that it can build a good idea of what the product looks like, and then it will then be generated into a scene. Yes, since we started working that way, we can work with international brands. And, we were working with a furniture manufacturer in Australia who was getting images sent from the factory in China to us to train LoRa's to generate product before it had even generate imagery before it had even hit the ocean to make it to Australia. So opportunities like that are really cool. You can start promoting a product well before you even have it, pre-sales. Really cool kind of campaign imagery of your product, pre-sales. So opportunities like that you would have never had.
That's awesome. Can you give us a window into what's coming next when it comes to Gen AI and photography?
I think just more control. I think more control is kind of what every creative really wants from the tools. There's a bit of a misconception that the control's not there yet. The control is there if you start to string together a workflow from a number of tools. But I think each tool, each platform is going to start to factor in more and more and more control. So I'm excited for that because, it's those little tweaks that are difficult at this stage, unless you know how to do them. They'll be very commonplace in the next kind of 12 months, I'd say.
Wow.
Just being able to shift an angle and things like that at the moment are quite hard. Create one product, multiple angles in one scene, those kind of things take a bit of technical nous to get done, but soon they won't. And that opens up opportunities for every man rather than people who have spent a lot of time figuring it out.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Democratization of access to these tools across all of the modalities, not just photography and video, of course, but just building agents. Those tools are becoming much easier to use and accessible to individuals with natural language rather than having to think about code and stringing nodes together.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And in terms of the kind of next industry that you could see this really proliferating, you've talked about fashion. I know you've been working in the automotive industry, but where would you like to see, I guess, take off next?
That's a good question. I mean, fashion, it hasn't been successful in fashion yet. And a really good chunk of my career has been in fashion photography. So I'm always watching that. I'm always trying to figure things out. I don't see any kind of synchronicity between the way AI works currently and the way fashion shoots go currently. But again, the technology changes so fast that maybe that intersection's coming soon. So I do watch it quite closely and I do keep an eye on it and work in that space. But it's not at a point where we can automate a shoot. There's things you can do in terms of generating backgrounds around existing imagery, around e-commerce style fashion images, putting them on location. But in terms of automating the whole process, garment onto AI model into AI background, it's not there yet. And a lot of the kind of people that are out there kind of promoting it at the moment, saying that it is there, maybe don't have quite as much experience in the fashion industry, and maybe more to do with tech than fashion. Because I know there's no brands I've ever worked with that would be comfortable with their product being 80% accurate, which is probably where the platforms are at the moment. But again, that everything changes, won't take long before that's 100%.
So to help me understand that, is that because garments on an avatar or a human model in the photo, that's really difficult to get the shapes and the shadows and so forth? So finer details, is that?
Finer details as well, textures and materials and fabrics and small pleats and stitches and stuff that can just be missed when you're working in smaller resolution. But it won't be long until those things are nailed. And people are furiously working on a solution. I think people really want it to work for the fashion industry. I guess they see that that's a big market, like I felt that furniture was, and it will happen eventually.
Yeah, it's coming for sure. Awesome. Hey, well, Heath, really awesome to chat with you. Quick fire round for 5 questions if you're up for it.
Yep.
Sounds good. Okay, so question number 1, ChatGPT, Claude or Gemini?
Claude.
Why Claude?
I love Claude. I mean, I was kind of a late bloomer in all of the areas outside of visual AI. I wasn't really using AI a lot in my life apart from that. And I've always kind of not been a big fan of GPT. So I love Claude. I don't like the imagery that GPT creates or Sora. So I've always kind of looked for other solutions, and Claude's really awesome.
I suppose side question here. If you see an AI generated image, even from someone who's really, really talented, can you tell which model it's come from? Is it that obvious?
Yeah. Sometimes not immediately. A lot of the kind of AI slop out there, I guess, you pick up straight away. There's some people who are really, really skillful that you have to have a good enough eye to pick up certain little things, the way shadow falls or something in the background to know that it even is AI generated. But I can usually tell which model something's come from.
Awesome. Okay, second question. Most overhyped AI trend in your domain right now?
People peddling GPT as a solution for marketing imagery. I see that a lot. people trying to, sign up here and I'll send you this solution. And a lot of the time, I don't think they come from a background in image creation. So it might be okay for them, but to be 75%, 80% accurate, or it might be enough to get people to sign up to newsletters and so forth. But if you've spent a career in creating images, you know that it's not up to scratch.
Totally. Question number 3, open source models or closed proprietary AI models?
Open source.
Open source.
Yeah.
Number 4, one New Zealand company quietly doing great AI work that most people might not have heard of.
Mike Hall at A-Bot.
Okay.
Do you know Mike?
No, haven't come across.
Oh, he's an absolute gun.
Epic.
Yeah, it's when you work near someone and just watch them operate and you're just absolutely blown away. Just the speed of the hands and the intensity and just the thought processes. Yeah, he's a very, very clever man.
And are they to do with chatbots in some way, or
with AI agents?
AI agents. Excellent.
Yeah.
Awesome. We'll have to look them up. And what's your number one recommendation for people to get started in AI when it comes to your domain, Midjourney, Stable Diffusion, etc.?
Carve out time, I guess. Don't expect results really quickly. I guess the kind of misconception is that this is a push button solution, just bang in a little prompt and it'll work. But if you want anything beyond the kind of very basic AI slop that most of us don't like when we see it, you need some time on the tools to figure it out, to move beyond that, I guess.
Absolutely. Well, awesome. Hey, thank you very much, Heath, for joining us today. And thank you to our listeners. Please subscribe to the channel for weekly episodes and to hear more from the people shaping and building New Zealand's AI future. Until next time, thanks for tuning in to the AI Corner.